Hi, everyone. How are you guys today? Good? So it's amazing that, first of all, the organizers picked the title that I need to present for today, so I didn't have a choice. And then, apparently, when I submit my biography, a short one, relatively, they pick up that one line at the end about my addiction to games, right? So I am actually globally ranked eighth in one of the mobile games, which is quite popular in Indonesia. So maybe I'll just give a little bit of background before I start the presentation, so you're not skewed towards the mobile game side of my profile. So full name, Reynazran Royono. I'm Indonesian. I'm currently the founder and CEO of Snapcart. So let me tell you a little bit about my background and why Snapcart as a company is quite close to my heart as a professional. So after graduating from college, which is a local college in Indonesia, I started working at Procter & Gamble for 9 years. So it was pretty a heavy experience as a consumer goods. I was based in different countries in Southeast Asia. I was based in the US for quite some time, moved back to Indonesia. And then I moved to consulting at Boston Consulting Group for 3 years, where I managed and lead the consumer goods practice area. But at the same time, I was also handling telco, public sector, as well as media sectors in the CG. Now, afterwards, I was in a startup called Berniaga.com, which is equivalent as Mudah.my in Malaysia. And then we exited the business in 2014, sold the business to OLX, and then afterwards started Snapcart. Now, the session today, I'm going to share a little bit of a different perspective about the digital side. And I'm going to start by sharing a frustrating condition or situation right now in the marketing world. And it is right now in the back of the minds of many marketers, market researchers, analysts, consumer goods practitioners, and many others. And then afterwards, I'm going to share how we can turn this frustrating situation, this frustrating condition, into something that is relatively more positive, and it's driven by one simple ingredient, which is receipts. So decades ago, when the internet was born, pretty much it changed how we live, right? It revolutionized how people share, how people consume, how people do their day-to-day basis kind of activities. And it generated a lot of data. So fast forward to today, we have more than 2.5 quintillion bytes of data generated each day. And that's freaking impressive. Right? Now here's the problem. Source of this 2.5 quintillion bytes of data per day is mainly coming from online activities. While we have very minimum or close to zero clue on what's going on in the offline world, it is actually very hard to capture data coming from the offline activities, especially when it comes to trying to get purchase transactions in the offline world. So coming from a consumer goods background, I experienced firsthand on that frustration in getting that offline transactions data. So let me reveal why. So this is a kind of a slide that we usually use when we communicate our business proposition to investors, right? In the offline world, the manufacturers, so let's call them the brands, tend to rely heavily on third parties in distributing their products or building awareness of their products. So for example, to sell their products to the market, then the manufacturers need to sell first to the retailers, which are the offline channels, and then the retailers will sell those to the consumers and shoppers. So manufacturers do not have the privilege to access data to shoppers and consumers directly. It's not like online sites, right? In online sites, you can actually see what the users are doing in real-time basis. That privilege is nowhere close to what we are seeing in the online world. Right? Now, even in building awareness of the products, the manufacturers tend to rely on media channels, whether it's traditional, it could be television, it could be radio, or even digital channels that is right now growing in terms of their spend. But the problem is they never know what is going on in terms of ROI of those investments growing into the channels they're investing in to build the awareness of the products. Now, to make it worse, in order for them to track the performance in the market, because they don't have access directly to the consumers and shoppers, the brands tend to rely heavily on data coming from incumbent market research agencies, right? And we're talking about outdated methodology where the market research agencies would go to do face-to-face interviews, go to check physically in the stores or even the homes, and then input manually all of those recorded transactions into the system. So this whole manual interventions created this long delay in delivering the data to the brands. So it is too late to know, and it is not actionable. So I hope there are some representatives of market research agencies in the room, just as you know that you are outdated and you need to keep update in your technology in trying to get the offline data right now. Now, this is the irony. Out of the transactions that is happening right now, especially in this part of the world, 99% of those transactions are still happening in the offline channels. And that's just the fact, right? And what happened is, from the past data, what we've seen, apparently there are categories that are easily converted into online purchases, but there are categories that are harder, relatively. So, example would be groceries, shampoo, detergents, right? So categories that are relatively more frequent in terms of purchases, and then those categories are purchased in baskets. So it's different compared to the likes of cosmetics or electronics, where it's relatively pricey and usually is bought in singles and less frequent. And it is actually consistent with the data that we've seen from e-commerce players, where there is still a big challenge for e-commerce players to turn categories that are more grocery-centric into online purchases. So what we believe, and what the brands believe, and even the e-commerce believe, and that's why Amazon is buying Whole Foods, and that's why Amazon is driving tests for their Amazon Go chains, that offline channels will never disappear and will always stay relevant. Okay, so offline is, again, hard to track, but there are attempts to see and track that offline transactions being done by digital publishers like Google and Facebook, where they work closely with credit card companies, they work with point-of-sales companies to try to relate what is the correlation between marketing attribution and impact to purchase, right? Now, the problem with this approach is there are still limitations. For example, if you work with credit card companies, it's hard for us to pinpoint the SKUs transactions or byproduct transactions of those being tracked in offline. You can actually see a total transaction and where it is being bought, but you don't really see what is in basket. Right? If you work with point-of-sale company, another problem is that you cannot identify the users buying from those POS systems, because you have really fragmented POS systems right now in the region, and you cannot really singularly pinpoint what is the user's transaction in different retail chains. So there are still limitations, and that situation does not bode well with the top advertisers, Unilever, Nestle, Samsung, because they need to understand the SKU transactions and how that attributed to media spends that they are spending right now in terms of marketing money. And that's right now still a big problem. So that kind of summarizes the frustrating condition or situation right now that we're seeing in the market, where it is driven by the gap and lack of data understanding from the offline channels. So Snapcart was founded in 2015, and what we want to be is to being the only reliable offline data solution in the region and potentially globally, right? So we do want to ensure that we help the manufacturers, the brands, to connect closer to the users, to the shoppers, to the consumers. So how do we do that? We pretty much try to ride on the wave of digital growth, right? So I've been talking a lot about offline, and now I'm trying to link it with the digital growth that we're seeing in the region, especially when it comes to smartphone usage. So we develop apps to try to extract offline data, right? And we basically have two apps to do so. So the first one is pretty much our core and bread and butter, and it's based on receipts. So what we ask the users of our app is to take a picture of the receipt, and then they get rewarded from that action. We then enrich the data by triangulating information from demographics, location. We even have our own in-app built-in survey platform that we can push in a targeted way to our users. Hence, we are able to actually get information on the basket information of our users and really aggregate that information to be then shared to the brands, our partners and clients, right? Now, what's interesting if you live in this part of the world is that more than 50% of the transactions in the offline channels are happening in the traditional trade, correct? So the traditional mom and pop stores, where if you go to Indonesia and the Philippines, they do not have cash registers, they do not have point of sale system. So this is what you call warungs in Indonesia or what you call sari-sari stores in the Philippines. So then if they don't have cash registers, that means that they don't have receipts. So how can Snapcart mine that missing receipts data? So enter our second app, which pretty much try to fold this receipt dilemma into a point of sales system that we provide for free for store owners who are running their business in the general trade, in the traditional trade, right? What differentiates us versus other POS systems is that we provide a solution that is grocery-centric, and we remove all of the obstacles of using the point of sale system by the store owner's perspective. For example, if you go to a small mom and pop store, then you will see more than 200 SKUs at any given time. And on a weekly basis, you'll see those SKUs rotating. There are SKUs that are discontinued, SKUs that are sold new by new salesmen coming to the stores. Imagine if the store owners need to handle the database of those SKUs in a frequent manner. So what we do is we help the store owners to remove this administrative work and manage the database for them. Because most of the consumer goods products are typically barcode-based. And that's something that we can help from our perspective. So the POS system that we've provided to the store owners would provide something that is simple and rewarding for the store owners to use if they use our point-of-sale solution. Now, one thing that I would like to emphasize is that Snapcart is not just an app developer company, right? So our capability lies in the way we are extracting information from the trade, on how we ensure that we provide quality users, we provide quality data, and we ensure accuracy of the data that we extract from our apps. So I'll just give two examples that I would say is quite important to share. So one is the SKU identification from a machine learning, artificial intelligence perspective. Right? So imagine that if you collect receipts, then you will see thousands of different formats of receipts, and within the different formats of receipts, you have different product descriptions that needs to be deciphered and linked to the master database that we have. So of course, we cannot do that manually. We need to create a machine learning capability to really predict what is printed on the receipts and what does that mean and how that translates into the master database that we've created. Now, another capability is our fraud detection system, because what we do not want is the cashback app to be utilized or to be used by users who are not representing real consumers or not representing real households. So example, it could be that the cashback app is being utilized by a cashier, a store staff, right? And that's something that we don't want. A retailer or a wholesaler. That's something that we don't want to have in our app. So we will not hesitate to warn, ban the users to not use the cashback app if we believe that they are not real consumers or real wholesalers. And those actions are needed because we need to ensure the quality of data that we extract from our apps. And that data need to represent real market activities. So that's why we need to ensure the quality of the data. Okay, very quickly, we believe that Snapcart is not just starting, we're starting in market research, but that's just a start. It is a sector that is very tough to handle because the sector is already dominated and monopolized by global players who's been around for close to 100 years, right? But the utilization of the offline data can be utilized in many ways. And it is going to go into multiple sectors that we will provide based on the suites of products that we've already created for our clients. And you can see here some of the suites of products that we have, and I'm not going to go through one by one because of the time that I have today, but these are the things, these are the services that are being utilized by our clients, and basically it drives different functionality but the same purpose, which is basically to crack the offline data gap right now experienced by most of the consumer goods companies. And what we believe is that we will be able to replicate what we've seen is working in the current countries that we're operating in. So right now we are in Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore, and Brazil. So we're right now venturing in Asia Pacific. And we look at the different countries that we've seen that we will be able to replicate in the near future and aggressively expand to multiple countries, right? And I'm humbled to be standing here in this awesome event, knowing that I'm fully supported by extraordinary individuals in Snapcart that will help me to turn receipts that are usually thrown in trash into cash. Thank you so much for